All right, so today is Monday, March 30th, and this is the Key Ministry Idea Share. So this is just a chance for ministry leaders to get together and talk about what's happening, since we all have a lot going on these days. The Key Ministry team is here, so we have Catherine Boyle, who is our Director of Mental Health Ministry, and we have Dr. Steve Gersovich, our President and Founder, and my name is Beth. And I will turn it over to Catherine or Steve. Do you want to kick us off here?
Well, Beth, I guess the question that I would have for the group is that, in the spirit of Rahm Emanuel, we don't want to let a perfectly good crisis go to waste. And I'm kind of curious in terms of what anybody in the group has been doing, over the last couple of weeks in terms of being able specifically to bless or share the love of Christ with families in their community who are wrestling with disabilities, or finding new ways to be able to minister with them that they might be able to share with other churches. I know that one of the things that we did on a very preliminary basis yesterday is it was so many churches that are streaming online, we started to do a little bit of promotion using targeted Facebook ads, to try to attract families within a 25-mile radius of our church, to the online service with a note attached to it that, kind of join us online during COVID-19. We're prepared to care and support you when we all get back together in person, something along that line. So I'm just curious, because one of the things I think that people are really hungry for, are ideas about how they can use this opportunity to grow the kingdom. I want to hear what everybody else is doing.
So we encourage you to chime in. Again, just unmute yourself or put something in the chat and we'll be sure to read it to the group.
Well, hi, everybody.
Go ahead.
I'm Barbara. Can you hear me? I worked for 5 years at Pine Rest Christian Mental Health Services in Grand Rapids, Michigan, as a chaplain for people with intellectual disabilities. And I'm currently here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My husband is a college professor on sabbatical. So I was blessed to meet my hairdresser a few weeks ago, new hair cutter, and she has a little boy with disabilities at home. And I gave her a book that I've developed. I mentioned this during one of our past meetings, but it's entitled Supper with the Savior, Communion in the Bible and Today. And it's intergenerational. So it's got activities at different age group levels, coloring pictures, activities, and so on. It's around communion and how God's big story, how communion talks about God's big story. So I'm starting to put these resources online on my website. And I've got a leader's guide also. The book was published by Regent College in Vancouver, British Columbia. And I've got a leader's guide, and I have visual icons in the leader's guide so that families can cut out the icons and put on an apron that the leader is wearing, or on a bulletin board or something, the different parts of worship, so they can have a home Bible lesson or worship time at home with the Bible study, the music, prayer. And I also have a procession where people can make things and then process them to the front of the worship area. So I'm putting those things online. And I also made some coloring pictures that show pictures of people with different types of disabilities. And I think that's important for people to see pictures of different types of people. Like, here's one for my leader's guide. And then I added some words to it. So those are on my website. This is my website, barbarabllin.com. And so I hope that will be something that people can download and use at home for all ages and all ability levels.
Great. Thank you for sharing that resource.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy.
Could you have Barbara spell her last name? I didn't catch that.
It's Bjelland. So it's B, J as in Jack, E, LLAND. And I'm
Thank you.
adding new resources daily, and please contact me. My email's on there too if you have any questions.
So something I'm trying tomorrow, I've set up a Zoom just like this, and I've invited the families, so the parents and students who are part of our special needs ministry and the volunteers that serve in the special ministry, just to drop in for half an hour tomorrow afternoon, just so we can see each other's faces. There's no agenda, we're not doing a lesson or anything like that, but just an opportunity for all of us to kind of reconnect, see each other's faces, and maybe, depending on how that goes, and if the students like it, we'll do additional things, with content. But I just think it's also, I'm part of the children's ministry team at my church, and yes, we're putting out materials and all that, but sometimes people just need to connect and see each other's faces. So we'll see how that goes. Have any of you tried something like that? Have you been doing Zoom or something like that with the groups that you would normally see in person?
We did. Last night we had a Zoom meeting with our youth. And so our youth, the way that we use a reverse inclusion peer mentoring model. So the youth and the peers that support them when they're here, we got together on Zoom. We just talked about how they're doing and had a short devotion, took some prayer requests. I think we took about 30 minutes. But it was really awesome because a lot of those kids have not had any connections since they finished school. And we're also going to do that with our parent group. We call our parent group Rest and Connect. And we are going to do what you talked about. We're going to give our parents an opportunity to just come into a room and connect, share what's going on, even brainstorm, problem solve, especially the whole homeschool thing that's going on right now with kids with special needs is really challenging. So we're doing some of that. And then with my volunteers, I've been doing that just to keep them in the loop and keep them connected. And something we did last Friday is we delivered, we call them COVID-19 quarantine survival kits to all of our families. We have about 50 families in our ministry. And so maintaining social distancing requirements, we just dropped off, we emailed the parents, let them know what we were doing, and we dropped off kits to each home. And that was such a huge blessing for those families. There weren't anything that was expensive or extravagant, but just even having some break opportunities for them during school. I printed things off the internet, some activities they could do. We gave them like an activity a week that they could do as a family. And then opportunities, we use the wordless book for our tool for sharing the gospel, things that they could do to review that and review the verses they've memorized over the last year.
That's a great.
With Young Life Capernaum, I work with 3 clubs in northern New Jersey and southern New York. Actually, 2 of the clubs are in 2 of the most ground zero counties in the U.S. now in the New York area. So obviously we're not getting together, but we had a breakfast club with the New York club last Friday at 10 in the morning. There were 15 participants, a few leaders, a lot of kids there and families. It was really good to be together. With another club, we had another evening get together. I'm involved at Liquid Church in New Jersey. We're a 7 campus ministry. And I just saw an email, we're having a parent support group tomorrow night. We have groups normally on Sundays, but this will be an online one because we can't meet together. Our church has really been good online before, but we had a prayer meeting with over 1,000 people using, I think we use Zoom, I'm not sure though, but it just has really stepped up the ante for connecting, not just special needs, but the whole church, small groups, services, things like that. So it's quite an opportunity. Not just for special needs, but for the whole church, I think, to connect because of this.
Al, a question for you. Is that parent support group tomorrow night, is that an ongoing group or is that a new group that's been formed because of the coronavirus response?
Well, there was going to be an on-site group on Tuesdays. We have 2 groups on Sundays. We have like over about 200 families with special needs in our church, in our 7 campuses. So there's quite a few, but it will be the first online one, I think. And it wasn't intended to be online, but it's what it is now. So I'm not sure how many people will be involved, but I expect quite a few.
Can I just see a show of hands? How many of you is your church doing something now because of this that you think might actually continue after this is all over? Yeah, so there's definitely been a little bit of a blessing here as we've tried new things. Let's see, Bronwyn says, we had a Big Buddy Zoom Connect on Thursday, mostly junior high through college volunteers. We checked in with each other, and then many talked about how they wanted to connect with their little buddies. That's awesome. That's awesome. Ryan Wolf is I'm assuming that's Ryan Wolf. It's Ryan, is sharing some, yes, Ryan Wolf is sharing some links in here. So if you go to abilityministry.com, there's an at-home activity and learning mega link list. There's a top 10 binge-worthy disability-themed lists, customizable daily schedule for families, hashtag be the church, self-isolation neighbor check. There's also daily Bible study that we post on our social media pages at Ability Ministry. Awesome resources, people. Definitely check those out.
So Beth, can I jump in for a second?
Please, please.
So yeah, those are a couple of things that we're doing just to be a resource to families and to churches. I'm also still involved at First Christian Church in Canton, Ohio. And one of the things that we're getting ready to do, as far as if you're not familiar with First Christian Canton, we have very large adult ministry, an adult class, about 80 to 100 adults that would typically come on a Sunday morning to that class. And so huge void for many of them. What we've been really pleased to see is how many of those folks in that class are able to get on Facebook. And so what we've started doing 2 weeks ago was to host a Facebook Live event where we will have the teachers teaching Sunday mornings at 9:30 Eastern time, so the regular class time, so they feel like they're not missing out as much as they can get online. So we will do a Facebook Live event, 9:30 Eastern. If you get on First Christian Church's Facebook page, there's a Kingdom Builders class. That's the class that we have, and I'll be teaching in there for the next 4 Sundays. So not only is it available to everybody at First Christian, but we'd like to push that out and make that available to others as well.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what we've been doing has been really just sharing the curriculum and the videos and things like that they're used to. We're sharing all those online, and then we have a private Facebook group already that I've been sharing a lot of resources and social stories, and we've got students reading to each other. We started that from the beginning. Every night they were reading. It started out with me reading, and then it turned into other teachers reading, and then it turned into older students reading to younger students, and so that was cool how that evolved. And then I've been working with our children's minister a lot. She's got a lot of really great ideas. One that's coming up for Easter is, you've probably seen a lot of people who are going on bear hunts and things like that through their neighborhoods lately, but she found a great resource. I was trying to get her to send it to me. I can't find it right now, but anyways, it's how you go around your neighborhood and find Jesus instead of finding eggs for Easter. That they're doing with the kids. And so there's all these ways that you can go around your neighborhoods and find things that represent, you know, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and take selfies with your family and post those. So I'm really excited about that. And then we're also looking into having game nights, and I haven't quite figured out, and I'm trying to figure out which games. If anybody's done this, I'm looking for ideas. I think bingo we could probably do, but I'm looking for more just fun things, especially that some of our older students can do with each other to create connectedness. And then of course our larger corporate worship services are all online now, and so I'm sharing those links, but that's what we're doing.
That's great. Thank you. Maybe Ryan can figure out how to do those games and get back to us.
I've a couple things. I've worked with several different churches and trying to get some things up and going, and a lot of churches. And I'll give a shout out to Ryan and Ability Ministry. Again, they've got some amazing curriculum, and a lot of the churches I've been working with their adult classes, especially, they've been doing. They use Ability Ministries curriculum, and that works great, especially to be able to do that through Zoom or through Facebook Live, but especially Zoom, where you can do screen shares and then do that. But what's nice with that too, especially on Zoom, is where all the individuals can see one another and have that interaction. So that's been cool to see several different churches being able to do that. And then many of them at the same time with Zoom, you can record it, so then they can then put it on their Facebook page or just even email it out or put it on a YouTube page for those that weren't able to get to it to see that later. Other thing that I've been working with several churches in doing, especially as we're coming up on Easter, is just another way to how we can think out of the box and be the church to our families. Obviously now it pretty much looks like most of us will not be having services on Easter, and many churches do the Easter egg hunts and things like that, and those are all being canceled. What I've been suggesting and helping churches with is try to put together Easter egg hunts that they can take to the families themselves. So, a lot of the churches already have all the eggs, because they've gotten those past several months. They may have already even packed them, but even if not, stuff them with eggs, and then take a dozen eggs or so, and then hide them in the front yards of your families. If you got anyone who are more are wheelchair or need more help with finding things, then put those eggs in areas that would be accessible for them to get to. Along with that, then you can put there's all kinds of things you can find on internet as well. If you want to download a devotional for the family then to do together, great material that's out there, put that together. And you just then let the family know you've done that. It's a great way that you can share that with them, let them have Easter together, and do that, and then let them feel like they're a part of it and know that they're able to be there. One other thing that we found is, there have been several families who haven't been able to attend church because of illness or whatever over the past several months. But because now everything's been via Zoom and internet, they're actually getting to worship now. So that's been an added plus for several churches and several families to all of a sudden be able to worship. So that's been a cool thing. And then the church that I'm at, they're doing their entire children's ministry. They've got an online lesson that they share as well. So that's been cool to be able to see the kids be able to go through the lessons as well and still have their time, still see the familiar faces that they have. Again, it's all done at a level that our families with individual special needs are able to do that and interact with that. So that's been a nice blessing for the families as well. And they can do that anytime through the week that works for them.
Thank you, Doc. Those are great resources. And I would love to see the Easter egg idea taking place. That's a really cool idea. I want to turn to the chat just for a second to make sure we don't miss anything. So Trace did an adapted version of categories via Zoom with a smaller group. So it can be done, people. Also, Barbara's asking for the instructions for the wordless book. She also offered her website again, which we talked about, BARBARABJELLAND.com. And she has some resources on there for Palm Sunday and for Easter. And she also reminds people about adjusting your Zoom settings so that nobody screen shares when they're not supposed to. And you can do that by putting a password. It's part of the Zoom settings. Just Google it if you don't know what I'm referring to. Ryan shared another Ability Ministry resource. So again, abilityministry.com, and it's how to be a good neighbor video. So it's a lesson that you can download from there. And then Tammy got back to us about the kits that she mentioned earlier. So this is a COVID-19 survival kit, and it contained 1 activity per week for 16 weeks, and ways the activity can be modified to incorporate the wordless book. Review ribbon, wand activities, including a ribbon wand, bubbles, and other simple break or fidget items, wiggle jar supplies and instructions, movement break cards, verse cards to review, and fun active ways they can review the verses. And Jenny, I didn't know you were on here. Jenny says there are printable resurrection egg tutorials that would be great to add if dropping off a dozen eggs. Oh, I like that idea. You can print the symbols and what to say when opening each egg. And she shared a link for Wordless Gospel. So it's letthelittlecHildrenCome.com. And then you'll be able to find the resource on there. It's child evangelism resources, wordless books. But I think if you get to letthelittlecHildrenCome.com, you can find it. Melinda's asking if these links will be available after this chat ends. Why, yes, they will. I'll make sure to include those when we post the recording. Oh, and Heather has her hand raised. Heather, do you have a question? If so,
I do. Hi, everybody. Just wondering, I'm concerned. I have a bunch of resources that I'll put on, I'll post somewhere, that some social stories on the coronavirus, one was excellent. And also a daily devotional coming out of Hope Center Ministries in Winnipeg. Shelley Power is putting together a daily devotional video, and it comes with, hands-on learning kind of things. It's very cool. But I have a question for and it comes out of my own friendship group out of here in Oakville, Ontario. How do I reach my friends that are living in group homes, adults? Largely with higher needs. I'm struggling with really how to connect with them, and I'm wondering if anybody has any thoughts on that.
I'm hoping Ryan, I'm hoping you have some thoughts for us, Ryan, and anybody else that can jump in and tackle this one.
Yeah, so you're looking to reach out to groups of people that are in a group home together. I would honestly, if it was me trying to get into a group home, it would be writing up some type of letter, dropping it in their mailbox, or knocking on their door, dropping it on their step. I know a lot of us are really super conscious about contactless connections. So I think there's ways that you can do that where you can get out, write a letter that has instructions on how to get connected, whether it be through, I'm assuming they would have access to maybe a Facebook Live, or even a FaceTime session. If you've got somebody with a smartphone in a group home, it could be as easy as saying, hey, I'd love to FaceTime with you guys at X date and time, if you're able to text with them. But yeah, I would leave a note. Some of the things I've seen, and I'm sure you guys have all seen it too on social media, even the people that are like quarantined because they have the coronavirus, some of the neatest things I've seen is the hand on hand outside the window things. I just like it. You see that, it's just so moving, even though there's a window pane separating people, just to have that type of contact. But yeah, there's really no way that I can think of, if you don't already have contact information, a number to text, or a number to call and FaceTime, without driving by and dropping off a note. So that's what I would do.
Jolene, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah.
There we go. Go ahead. Okay, you're on. Oh, we keep.
Oh, now I'm okay.
Okay,
all right. Now we're good. My mother is in a memory care unit about 15 minutes from here, and we haven't been able to see her face to face since March 12th. I would suggest, if there's a group home, that you call them, if you can do that at all, if there's any way. Even connect with the parents of the people in your group home. They might be able to give you that information. They might be able to call the home and say, this is my son or daughter's church. We want them to have access. And then once you've got that, you can start doing a lot of things. The home where my mother is, they will arrange for us to have FaceTime with mom. And of course, if she's in a memory care unit, you know, she can't work that herself. Yesterday, we took our grandkids and my daughter and myself and my husband went over, and she's on the ground floor. So we just went to her window and we let the home know we were doing that and asked them to raise her blind. And then we all took stuffed animals and had a stuffed animal parade for her. And we called her. I called on my cell phone so we could talk to her and she could see us talking to her. So, and once you have that person's number, give them a call every day. It doesn't have to be long. Maybe they can't even talk back, but if they can hear your voice, just any of those things. And we're sending lots of cards. My 4-year-old grandson made her a paper airplane because he thought she needed something to do. So we mailed that. So any of those things are good ways to connect. And I think in this situation, people at the group homes are going to be glad and excited to help you, even if you're not a family member, to help you figure out how to connect and keep their people in the loop.
That's great. Thank you, Jolene and Ryan, for sharing those ideas. I want to jump over real quick to the chat again. So the question came up, how do you do the egg delivery in a way that is not transmitting the virus? And so one thought is to bag them now, wipe down the bags with a Lysol wipe, and then deliver them 4 days before Easter so they have time, you know, the whole fomite thing, so that's not an issue. So that's one suggestion. Also, it was brought up that chaplains might be considered essential service, so it's possible that chaplains could still visit a group home in person. I think it probably depends where you live, because there's certain areas that is just not happening, even with masks. Okay, and then somebody was raising their hand. Melinda, was that you? Who was raising their?
Yeah, it was, but you kind of said what I was thinking. Our church is trying to and organizing a food drive and food, hot meals and grocery bags in coordination with our local school system to still feed those families, whoever comes by, as an outreach opportunity. And so in doing that, we've had to look at all of this, and basically the way we're promoting it to our membership is we're not asking for anybody to volunteer to do this. And before you volunteer to do this, you need to ask yourself a few questions, you know, some of those at-risk questions. But if they do choose to do it, they're going to come and everything is going to be Lysol'd before it's given. It's going to sit there for a couple of days after it's donated. And even all the food is all going to be prepared in individual containers that we're giving out. So it's not 100% risk-free thing, but it is an opportunity to still give things to people. And the same could be said with the eggs. If you Lysol them off and let them sit for a couple of days, you know, I think that that's something that we can do if we just do it carefully. And one other thing that I'll add, as far as reaching out to adults, one of the things that I'm doing, we're blessed in our special needs ministry to actually have professional staff that help run our classes every week and help run our ministry in addition to our church volunteers. And I'm trying to figure out how to continue to pay them and how to continue to use their resources. And so what we're going to do for next month is that I'm going to pay them honor system, obviously, but I'm not worried about that at all. But we're going to pay them based on the time that they directly one-on-one reach out to all of our students and all of our families, because they want to see them more than they want to see me for the most part. So I think that's another thing that we can do, is just do everything we can to encourage these individual relationships. I think, especially for our special needs ministry, I'm working with our children's minister for a lot of ideas and activities, but how I'm really going to reach most of our families is going to be done individually, based on the relationships that we already have. So that's all I was going to say.
Thanks. While we're thinking of the next question, I'm just going to really quickly share my screen because I want you all to see what Key Ministry is putting out, updating every day. So if you go to keyministry.org and just click on the bar on the top, This is being updated every day, so that's where you'll be able to find, the recording of this meeting. But we're doing blog posts, some Facebook Lives, some interviews, roundtables, that kind of thing. At the bottom of the page, you will find some websites that we recommend and some additional resources that you can link to. So I just wanted to make sure you are all aware of that. Steve or Catherine, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the other things we need to be thinking about?
Yeah, let me jump in here for a minute. I really recommend that everybody on the call take an hour sometime this week and watch, Beth, if you don't mind screen sharing again, watch the video interview with pastors from Spain and Italy.
I watched it last night. I cannot, yes. I'll show you. That's this one right here. It was something else. This one?
Yes.
Yeah.
And, they are obviously several weeks, a month ahead of where we are in the US. And so I think there were, 7, 8, maybe different pastors that were interviewed, and they were asked the whole gamut of questions that you could imagine right now. Like, what do you wish you knew in advance? What do you think is the most important thing that churches can be communicating now? Do you think that, people are, receptive to what you have to say, that kind of thing as a church? And over again, the people consistently said, get ready for the mental health needs. And that's, Steve can speak to this, but that's where Ed Stetzer and many of these people who have really taken a leading role in what the church needs to be doing about coronavirus have been saying for a couple of weeks, is that that's really going to be, what we need to be prepared for in the next few weeks, because people are obviously not able to leave their homes. There's lots of families where the strain is really starting to take hold. And so we are, to quote one of the pastors, we are to be agents of hope in this time for people who, have the virus, are at home because of the virus. Their lives have been turned upside down. So I just really, again, encourage you to watch the video and see for yourself some of the things that they said. They really, they really emphasized, just taking care of the people that God has entrusted to you. One pastor in particular talked about that as being, don't worry so much about maybe outreach at this time. You want to be sensitive and be caring for your neighbor who's not in your faith community. But I think a couple of them said, you are going to grow through this time, because people are so hungry for this hope that they can't find anywhere else. Maybe some of you saw last week, there was a picture floating around social media about a Walmart somewhere where their entire aisle of Bibles was basically sold out. And so people are really, they know that this is something far beyond our normal control, and they're really looking for God and for hope in this time. So anyway, that's my piece.
All right, Steve, do you want to say anything, or should I go back over to the chat and address that?
Okay, let me just touch on a couple of things that I think folks need to be sort of aware of and anticipating over the next week or two. I posted something online last night that the second largest church in our community has a situation now where a young single mom is in the hospital on life support and has a very poor prognosis. That I would guess, and maybe this has affected like people in like Al's church already because of where they're based, but I would guess that it's highly likely, or that there's a significant likelihood that someone through your church will die from this between now and the end of April. And I would anticipate, especially the fact that, here in our community, that this is a young mom, that people are going to feel very vulnerable. And when that stuff happens, the rates of anxiety are going to go through the roof. And folks are going to have a very hard time being able to cope with all of that. And so a couple of things that I would have churches starting to think about is, what kinds of supports do you have in place to deal with the rising levels of anxiety that all of your people are likely to experience in the next couple of weeks? And specifically, within within people who are on your team, the folks who are involved with like pastoral care and support, what do you want to start preparing now to help your families with bereavement? And are there specific resources you might want to think about specifically for helping with the bereavement issue, among folks served by your ministry who may have intellectual and developmental disabilities? One of the things that I saw, a large church in our area, Cuyahoga Valley Christian, that took the Sunday night time that they would ordinarily use for worship this past week and devoted it specifically to a time where the church would gather to talk about these mental health issues. So they had a psychologist who's been a longtime member of the church. They had a pediatrician who is very involved with the church and is a highly recognized person in the community. And they did basically like one of these like large Zoom roundtable meetups where the church was talking about internally how they could go ahead and support one another. I mean, so, these are some things that you might start to have in the back of your mind, because the mental health piece of this is going to become more and more of an issue. I would think by the end of this week in a lot of places, I would think almost certainly pretty much everywhere by Easter. And, Doc Hunsley, who's on the call, called me last night and had an idea, and you can share maybe a little bit about like what we're going to be doing together with your ministry, Doc.
Yeah, so on Friday, SOAR is going to be having a webinar geared towards families. It's going to be Talk with the Docs, where it's going to be myself and Steve, and we're going to be talking on how to cope with anxiety and stress for families with special needs during COVID-19. We've got things out on social media right now. I'm just in the process of getting emails sent out. I know Key Ministry is going to help share the information as well, but would love to have you share that with all your families. I know right now, especially as our families, it's an unprecedented time because they're not only being parents, but they're now also being the school teacher. I've got several families that we work with who they normally have caretakers for their kids, and they've had to let go of the caretakers because they don't want to bring in any of the infectious disease into the house. So they now have caretaking. They're the janitor. They're the chef. They are everything. And so they are just absolutely overwhelmed right now. So it is just an unprecedented time. Families don't know what to do. So Steve and I are going to talk through some coping mechanisms for them and then just open it up and take questions. We'll take questions through the Zoom webinar, and then it'll be on Facebook Live on our SOAR Facebook page. We'll take live questions through there as well. So we'd love to have you share that with your families and have you all be a part of that as well.
Great.
Yeah, Liquid, I just found out, is starting, online support groups for people struggling with anxiety. They'll be online, and I don't know what the content is yet, but I guess we're getting ready for that happening, which is, like you've suggested, is already happening.
And what is the link for that?
I don't know yet. I mean, they just mentioned during services they'll have support groups. I don't know yet how that's going to work, but a lot of them they'll all be online, obviously, because we can't meet in person yet. As I get information, I can let everyone else know what is going on in the groups.
Yeah, so that's Liquid Church that's doing that.
Liquid Church, yes.
I'm going to head over to the chat for a second. So Jolene shared a video, and it's kind of too long for me to read the the URL, but her husband is a hospital nurse being trained for ICU duty, and so she shared this video. So I would say maybe if you follow Jolene Philo on Instagram, on social media, maybe she'll share it there. And she said the video's excellent, and it's from an ICU doctor in New York City who is actively caring for COVID-19 patients. Bronwyn asked, what are churches doing for special needs families in significant financial distress because of this crisis? So, you know, we all have, our churches have benevolence funds, but what are some other things that you've done? And Jenny shares that she's been able to help a family to resources like SSI because they weren't income eligible before. Also, so now they are, and that money will be helpful. Also be aware of local resources like United Way, etc. And Melinda says, thank you, Doc and Steve, for putting together the resource for next Friday. I do want to mention that there's another roundtable webinar happening this Wednesday at noon. And that one, I'm just going to share my screen here again, go back to our events page. Let's see. That one is called Equipping Pastors for the Coming Mental Health Crisis. So that one is at noon Eastern time on Wednesday. And Steve, do you want to say anything about that one?
Yeah, so Brad Hafes is going to be doing that together with us. Brad, really interesting guy. He was the pastor of the largest Missouri Synod Lutheran church in the United States, who lost his job in the mid-1990s after he had a full-blown manic episode and was seen as part of that publicly, you know, engaging in some sexually inappropriate things. He has been involved with starting a ministry called Fresh Hope. And so that they have a Christian-based small group support model that's done through peer support. They have groups now, I think, operating in 25 states and like 4 different continents. And so Brad's going to be talking a little bit. And I think that this would be a good thing, you know, if you were looking to share something with like your pastoral care people. I think that would be like a good resource perhaps for like guys on staff, you know, who, you know, are going to be in a situation where whatever they were experiencing before in terms of like counseling and support needs or people approaching them for help are going to be overwhelmed. And I suspect that he might have some good ideas about how, you know, how churches can respond to that.
This is Dawn Skaggs, and I just wanted to follow up on that because we've done a lot of long-term deployments. I work for Baptist Child and Family Services, and we work with a lot of churches collaboratively in responses. And one of the things that we find every single time is that responder and support person, mental health resilience and sustainability. And there's a couple resources, not necessarily faith-based, but one of them that I'm thinking about is Johns Hopkins University. They have a short online course. It's very simple, written for emergency managers and first responders and firefighters. So it's not human services based necessarily, which means it brings the concepts very simple on how a layperson could participate as a support person. It's called Psychological First Aid through their online Coursera is the platform. And it's, like I said, it's very simple, and it walks people through how do you be there for others. And it's a tool to sort of take your volunteers and have them be force multipliers possibly for their peers, but also for first responders. And I think there's some great things out there on the emergency response side that we can implement as churches to really be a little seamless in what people's experiences are and meld into what's happening for them with respect to the pandemic disaster, and really provide some of that support for the first responders. We found many times is that all of those human services support people, once you get to about 6 weeks or 9 weeks, before they realize there's decomposition, they begin to start to fray at the edges. So using all of the other volunteers that we have in the churches that don't have a means to do anything face-to-face is one idea to really pull those two disparate pieces together and support the supporters.
Thank you, Don. I was so looking forward to having you here for Inclusion Fusion Live and hearing your workshop. So
Next year.
I have a couple resources that might be helpful. This is Jolene again. One thing I think as we're talking to parents about their mental health care is somehow we need to encourage them and remind them that they know more about what everybody else is living with for the first time. And that however they've come to cope with that, and if they are coping well, that's going to serve them well, and they can share that with other people. Before the COVID thing started, I've been working on a book about stress and compassion fatigue in parents, and I interviewed 16 parents, and the ideas they have and the things they're doing are just amazing. And I'm working on the book proposal right now. So that's one thing I think we need to be doing to our families. You have to do that carefully, because I remember when my son was little and one doctor said, if I ever have another patient that has this, I'm sending them to you because you know more than me about this disability, which is scary to hear when you're 26 from a doctor. But there are ways we can communicate that well. The other thing is, in one of the first books I wrote, this one's called Different Dream Parenting. There is a section in it about dealing with the death of a child and grieving and just all sorts of things. There's a lot of practical stuff in it. There's 4 chapters about that, including kind of the theology of suffering and disability, and answer some of the questions we might have about why God would allow our kids to suffer. It deals with a lot of other things throughout the book, but that chapter or that section I think is particularly important right now. And one of the books I really used that helped me in that was Heaven for Kids by Randy Alcorn. He's written a book called Heaven for Adults, but this one answers questions like, will my dog be in heaven? You know, kid questions, things that they really want to know, and it's all biblically based. So it would seem to me that maybe we could frame that, and I think it would be good with a lot of people, for people with developmental disabilities. Could we do a book study on that, an online book study about that? Or could a family do that? Or we could encourage parents to just read the Heaven book, because that will help us keep our eyes on Christ instead of just the situation. You know, help us remember this isn't all there is. We have more hope. And I know mental health issues can go beyond that, but at least that would help us provide that firm foundation. So there you go.
thank you, Jolene. I want to read from the chat. So, hey, Amanda. So Amanda says that her church, and she's in Central Ohio, so her church launched their online campus because of COVID-19, and they've added ASL interpretation to one of those services in a low-tech way. So once the sermon/worship are filmed, the interpreters are taking those files and then filming themselves interpreting the sermon/worship into ASL. Because I think a lot of us, even though we're streaming on Sundays, it's actually being recorded on Saturday. At least that's how it's happening at my church. They then send the file to the media team, and they add the interpreter in a little bubble on the corner of the screen. There's a large deaf community in Central Ohio, and so many new folks are being reached. That's awesome. All right, anybody, other things to share, questions to ask?
Can I say something?
I have a link
Yes.
to that resilience resource from Johns Hopkins.
Yes, so Don, if you want to email that to me, I will make sure that that gets posted with the, with the rest of this, because it's probably long, I'm guessing.
It may be. I will look it up as we speak, and if I can find it before we're off, I'll just put it on the chat, but I'll email it to you also.
And if not, just email me. Okay, thanks.
Sure.
All right, and Lisa, you had something.
I just wanted to add one of the things that we've been doing for some of our moms who are quarantined at the moment due to health issues with their children. is to simply offer to be kind of like their, what do you call it, the food runner. And we will, take their orders over the phone and go and purchase from, McDonald's or wherever the drive-through that they are looking for, and then bring it and leave it for them to provide dinner in a way that's not, taking it home, cooking it, and stuff like that. So that's another option for those who need that, who you would usually do a meal train or something like that for.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah. So being the Uber Eats delivery service, or I just heard that Instacart might be going on strike, and I know some families really depend on that. So I don't know if that's true, but Linda said they're coordinating a 24-hour prayer vigil. So that's neat. Catherine?
Yeah, so my mom lives in a retirement community, and they are on lockdown. They're not even really supposed to leave their rooms. She's not getting any kind of nursing care, but they just want, obviously, to keep everybody well. And so a lot of stores have implemented the early morning shopping times for seniors. So if you are a person who works at a nursing home or retirement community like that, you can get permission from the stores to also come shop at that time. And I would think that that would apply to churches or, community groups that are trying to buy to feed a lot of people as well. But you just need to check with the store where you're going to shop before you just show up.
I just wanted to follow up on that, that what both you and Lisa said. One of the things that we have done here in San Antonio is although the stress and mental health issues with the youth, particularly college students and seniors of high school and college who are going through their own things and feeling displaced, we have put them together with some of the people who do need deliveries, some of the families and young moms and people in group homes. And they are their Uber Eats or their Girl Friday type of role. And it gives them a sense of purpose, and it connects them to the families and connects the families to a new face out in the community. And so they go and do their errands and pick up their groceries and then bring them back and leave them on the step. So it's kind of a nice connection hitting both sides.
And I'm sure the college students love it too. My middle son turned 20 last week, and for his birthday, we let him go do the grocery shopping for us. He was actually really happy.
Can I ask you a question, Dawn? So I'm part of a group in my area that, people post needs and people, volunteer for things, but I haven't seen like a real good way to coordinate those two things. So are you using technology to match the people that have needs with the people who have time and want to volunteer, or, how are you making that happen?
So it's been pretty easy for us because this is being primarily facilitated through a large church, Cornerstone Church here in San Antonio. They have live streaming for both of their services, and in between those two service times, there's two programs. One is Vacation Bible School for the children, and then the other is community announcements, which extends a lot. It's more extensive than the announcements during a face-to-face service. And so we had that announcement and that opportunity for volunteering, and specifically targeted the youth. The people who have needs, they're more eager to reach out. So we were, reaching out to the youth for essentially a way to get out of the house and do something. There's some programs that some of our youth were able to access as well through their schools to get some internship credit for doing it. So we really did it through that electronic announcements, and then coordinated some of that with the prayer line as people called in or emailed in for prayer. We put those two groups together there. Where there was a need, we offered the opportunity to a youth to go do it. There is a board that we had on the website as well, where they could do it electronically and go pick from jobs, sort of like a job board. And so there was those primary ways that we put those things together. There was some talk of reaching out to some of the local Christian universities. We have 3 of them here in town, to try to get youth and students through that. But we have not done that yet. There hasn't been a shortage of people. Like Beth said, it's a 20-year-old eager to get out of the house when they're not supposed to.
Yes.
So that's the primary way we've done it so far.
So Steve Gersvich mentioned in the chat that, so we had a webinar last week with Nil Smith, so that's it's on our coronavirus page, so check it out. He had some great ways of reaching our most vulnerable populations using technology. And he mentioned, I think it's vomo.org, VOMO.org, as a tool for connecting volunteers with families during this time. So that could be a resource to check out. Let's see, also, oh, okay, a couple of people had to jump off, and I see that we're reaching the top of the hour here. So thank you, Bronwyn, Debbie, a couple other people, Heather had to jump off, but thank you for being on. Any last minute thoughts from the team? No. Okay. So we will be doing this every Monday for the foreseeable future. So get used to these backgrounds, people, because you'll keep seeing them. And again, check out keyministry.org/events to see the other things that we have going on this week, Wednesday at noon, Friday afternoon. And please reach out if you have questions, if there's anything that we can collectively help each other with. That's what we're here for. So, all right. Okay. All right. Take care, everybody, and we will see you back here next week. Bye.